In this demo, we're going to explore the differences between fixed width layout and fluid width layout. I already have my page properties open now. I've got a simple page created here with some graphics on it. And this one is set at fixed width, but you can go to your pull down menu and you can see we also have fluid width. And we'll explore that shortly, but right now let's work with fixed width. I did use the default page width of 960, but I did make my height 3000 pixels high so that I can demonstrate pinning as well in this lesson. Everything else here I believe I left at default, and I'm going to click OK. And we're currently looking at a fixed width layout. So basically what that means is if I go to File, Preview, and Page in Browser, it means that no matter what, my page will not change size and things won't really move around that much, or at least they won't resize. Everything is fixed basically in size. And you can see as I get wider, I'm seeing my background, if you will, my browser. This yellow area is the defined page. And if I get too small, I'm basically starting to cover up, and the page does stick to the left top, and I'm just going to be covering things up if I make it smaller. Now that's something we can deal with Muse using responsive design, but we'll get into that in another lesson. Right now I'm looking at a fixed width layout. So let me go back to Muse here and show you some of the things that will occur with that with respect to pinning. Now pinning is a feature which can allow me to actually stick things to the page and avoid the scroll for one, and have a relative position either related to the page or to the browser. Now in fixed width it will be the browser. So let me highlight, I'll highlight this graphic here in the foreground, and I'll show you up here we have our pinning. Basically in fixed width you would use the left group, which has 6 different locations: upper left, upper center, upper right, and then I'd like to think of them as a little bit more radical, the lower left, lower center, and lower right. So let's just start one at a time. Upper left, which shows you here with these dotted lines that it will be locked to the left and top relative position of the browser. So let's just go and see what that actually implies. Alright, so automatically I saw something kind of jump there. Remember, this thing is fixed. The distance between here and the left will not change, and the distance between here and the top will not change, no matter how I resize the browser. So let's just take a look. Okay, so I'm just going top to bottom, but let me go left to right. Now you can see these other objects, which are currently behind them on the same layer, are moving with the page, because the page actually is moving. The page is centered, and if I get bigger, it just recenters itself. And if I get smaller, when I get to the edge on the left, then my browser just starts to cover things up. But you'll notice with that graphic of the two hands, it is not moving. It is literally pinned to that upper left corner. And really the upper left corner is the registration point for a web page. So if you want to make something locked in place, could be a menu, could be a graphic on the page, you will lock it to that upper left. Alright, so let's go back and explore some of the other options with the pinning. So we'll just try upper middle. It'll be subtly different, and you could probably anticipate how this will play out. But basically expect this thing to stay centered to the middle of the browser, which coincidentally, in this case, should be basically the same as the middle of the page, which again we see as yellow. And that's happening. But once we get to the edge, again, once that page hits the wall on the left, our browser is actually getting smaller than our page. And that graphic is centered to the browser and not to the page. So you can see that as long as you see the whole page, it remains in the center. But once we get smaller than the page, it stays on the center of the browser. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly around the clock here. Upper right, same idea. It's going to stick to the right and to the top. So I'll just quickly demonstrate here. You can see here when I'm pushing again on the left that it pushes it right in. I could conceivably push it off the page if it was set up in such a way. But it's sticking. Again, the distance from here to the right and from here to the top is fixed. And you'll notice it will always adhere to this top corner relatively speaking with the distances. Now the bottom set is the exact same, so I'll quickly go through those. So I'm going to come down to the bottom lower left, and you can see the dotted lines. It'll keep that distance from the left and this distance from the bottom of the browser. Now that's the one thing I'd like to really emphasize here, is that because my browser height is set to like 3000 pixels, my image is always going to be 3000 pixels from the bottom of the browser. So unless your browser can go taller than 3000 pixels, you'll actually never see it. And I'll prove it here. I'll demonstrate it, I guess. Preview page in browser. And yeah, where did it go? It's gone. It's beyond. It's above and beyond. Unless, again, I can expand this to over, or at least 3000 pixels, I'm not going to see it. So I can show you here. It's basically, it's 3000 pixels above bottom of the browser. Remember, the pinning is to the browser and not to the page. So it's not really near the top of what we see as the page here when we apply this lower pinning. That goes the same true for the other two. So there's really no point in me clicking those. They would also just, sort of appear or not appear because they'd be theoretically way above the line. Unless I had such a high resolution computer monitor that I could shrink it and fit it in my browser. Okay, so that's the pinning with respect to a fixed width layout. I'll just go back here to my page properties. I'll try to change this. I'm always leery about changing these things after it's been created, but I'll bring it to a very small height, 300. I'll click OK. And you see what it did? It actually, it's there, but it moves. So if you look in my author mode here, if I scroll up, it's like 3000 pixels from the bottom there. So I could, of course, and I would have to grab it and basically drag it down into the page, because relative to the bottom, which is what it's set at right now, it was 3000 pixels from the bottom, or more or less 3000, right? So if I bring it into the fold here, if you will, and maybe I will demonstrate the other two quickly with the shortened page. It's going to be whatever pixels from the bottom to here. So let's just check that out quickly. Okay, so there it is. It's a little bit out of page, so you know what, let me just bring that down a bit more. And I guess you'll notice here what I see on the page here is not necessarily what I'm going to see in the browser. So you do need to test it, of course. Now if I start to resize my browser, you see how that's sticking to the bottom left, right? It's pinned to the bottom left. So the only thing that's going to affect his position is the height. And yes, I can definitely push that out if I needed to. So I would get the same response from the centering as well as from the right. So I don't think we'll bother doing those ones. But just a caution, especially when you're using a very tall page, that relatively speaking, when you pin it to the bottom, one of the three bottom elements, it's the distance from the bottom of the browser. All right, so that is our overview, if you will, of using fixed width. And I'm just going to actually change this to the top left corner again. And again, yes, fixed width layouts combined with the pinning features. And again, when you're using fixed width, you only can use this left panel. The right one will not work. The right one's meant for fluid, and we'll do that in the next presentation.